In Houston, they're slowly opening up things in Houston now, back up slowly.
Yeah, Texas as a state has started phase one reopening last Friday, so it's been about 2 weeks since they've done that, and it's definitely not normal yet. I mean, restaurants can only open at 25% capacity. A lot of places have chose still to remain closed because financially they can't really make any money if they're only at 25% capacity. But slowly but surely, hopefully things start to get back to normal, and I'm grateful that my employer, Gal Media, which owns, of course, SB Nation Radio and ESPN 97.5, they extended an opportunity to come back. So I'm thankful for that chance to get back to work for sure.
So let's talk about some sports topics here real quick here. Let's get into the NFL draft and free agency. What are your thoughts? Let's start with the local teams. Where are you at? Like the Texans, and then obviously the draft with the free agency, and they traded their best receiver in Hopkins. So what are your thoughts on that team, and what are your thoughts on the draft and free agency in general first?
Yeah, I think obviously, the DeAndre Hopkins trade is the storyline of the offseason because nobody saw that coming and people are still very upset about it, and rightfully so. I mean, he's been a great player. He's one of the best players in the history of that franchise. To me, he's the best wide receiver in the NFL because year after year, no matter what quarterback he will play with, he's going to put up great numbers, and he's shown that in his career. But, looking at what they've had to do this offseason, they bring in Randall Cobb. We'll see what he has left in the tank. David Johnson, of course, was in that trade. I mean, if you get 2015 David Johnson now, that could be something. But, he's been on the decline the last few years, so who knows what type of player he'll be. And then in the draft, they didn't have a first-round pick. So they were kind of just trying to fill out pieces of the roster and improve around Deshaun Watson. But it's tough to say you improved when you trade away, DeAndre Hopkins. And, they added Brandon Cooks in a trade with the Rams, but Cooks has been inconsistent at times, and there's a reason why he's been on so many teams in his career despite his obvious talent. So, I think the big question for the Texans can be if everything goes right, all right, they can certainly be a playoff team and be in the mix like they were last year. But there's a lot they're riding on here, and there's a lot of pressure on this Texans team to take another step forward after they went 10-6 last year and obviously blew a 24-0 lead to the Chiefs in the divisional round.
So, do you think that Randall Cobb signing was like a desperate move, or because I think 3 years? I mean, he's still a good receiver, but I think 3 years is a little too much for him.
Yeah, the money was surprising, not even just the years. It seems like, you look at the wide receiver market and, the Texans, to me, it looked like they overpaid. When you see Robbie Anderson only go for 2 years, $24 million, I'd rather have Robbie Anderson than Randall Cobb. Rashad Perriman only had to take a one-year deal. Obviously, the Cowboys re-signed Amari Cooper, so he never really hit free agency with Dallas bringing him back. But, it was a very dire wide receiver market, and I think the Texans were just like, screw it, we're an ATM machine. Here's some money, Randall Cobb, come on board. And that's kind of how it happened. They brought him on, and now they're going to rely on him to, be the number one slot guy for them on this team.
How long? Let me ask you this, because how long is the owner going to run with Bill O'Brien as a GM and as a coach? Because I feel like Bill O'Brien is messing up everything for that franchise.
Yeah, it's the question everyone always asks me about Bill O'Brien. I mean, the reality is Bill O'Brien overall as a head coach, I think is a good head coach. I think he's above average at being a head coach. He's taken the team to the playoffs 4 of his 6 years. He's done a good job keeping the team together before they had Deshaun Watson and finding ways to win with, Ryan Fitzpatrick and Brian Hoyer, Brock Osweiler. So I think O'Brien's a better head coach than he gets credit for. However, him as a GM has been just a flat-out disaster. I mean, some of the moves have been fine, but it's what he's given up to make some of these moves, right? Not valuing draft picks, giving a third-round pick for Duke Johnson, trading away 2 firsts and a second for Laramie Tunsil, and not having a contract in place. So then you had to really overpay him after you brought him on because he had all the leverage. And, obviously the Hopkins trade speaks for itself. We just got into that. So, how long is the ownership, going to ride with Bill O'Brien, Cal McNair, the owner of this team? I think it's a great question. I don't think he's in any jeopardy right now. I mean, if they go 4-12, that will change things. But, everything I've heard and, people in the know that I talk with say that Bill O'Brien has the absolute trust of Cal McNair. And those two get along great. And Cal has, a strong belief, strong conviction in Bill. And we'll find out if he's right. I personally think Bill, the head coach, fine, but get a real GM. And obviously Bill's now calling all the shots, so we'll see how it works out.
Yeah. So before we get to the 2 local teams in New York, As you know, I'm a big Dallas Cowboy fan, and I just want to get your take on their offseason and the draft, and your thoughts on the signing of Andy Dalton as a backup quarterback.
Yeah, I think draft wise, Cowboys, hit a grand slam. They really did. I loved, kind of what they did. Did they need CD Lamb necessarily? No, but when a player that good is on the board, take them. Why not? Make yourself dynamic. I mean, I love what they've done with the draft. I love what they've done this offseason, shoring up some of their needs. Getting Cooper back is huge. The question for them is enough of this Dak Prescott stuff. Get a deal done. It's time to make a deal. And it's so funny because I interviewed Dak on my radio show at the Super Bowl in early February, and he was so confident there was going to be a deal done. He didn't want to even be asked the question about the negotiations. He's like, it's going to get done. It will happen soon.
Hello?
Yeah, you hear me?
Oh, what? Oh, yeah, you're good?
Yeah, there you go. I lost you there. You just frozen. I couldn't hear you.
Oh, yeah, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep, I got you.
So I think you were explaining about the Cowboys, about the Dak Prescott situation.
Right, and then you asked about Dalton too. And you know what? I like the Andy Dalton signing. I mean, there is a real value, obviously, for a great backup quarterback. And Andy Dalton's probably a starter in this league. There's just no starting jobs available for him at this point. So to get the best backup you could have for Dak, I think that's huge. The one thing about Dak that's so great about him is that he's never missed a game. But you know what? Things happen. Drew Brees never misses games either. Last year he had a finger injury that kept him out for 5 games. So you saw the value of Teddy Bridgewater stepping in and playing as well as he did. So, Andy Dalton to me is a starter that happens to be the backup for the Cowboys, and that's a great signing if you're the Dallas Cowboys. And if you're a Cowboy fan, you should be confident that if something were to happen to Dak, Andy Dalton is more than capable of coming in and playing well.
So let me ask you this: what was that like covering the Super Bowl with your show and interviewing like the former great NFL players and current NFL players and Dak Prescott? What was that like?
Tremendous experience. So thankful that SB Nation Radio, the last 2 years since I've been with them, has provided the opportunity to do shows from Radio Row leading up to the Super Bowl. And some of the guests have been unbelievable. We've gotten the chance to speak to. So so appreciative of that. And it's my favorite week of the year. It's a lot of work. You're up early, they're late, just interviewing and preparing the show every day. But it was an amazing experience, and I look forward to Radio Row at the Super Bowl every year.
So now let's talk about the 2 local teams here in New York, the Jets and Giants. Obviously, one team is going different directions, but what are your thoughts on them during the draft and free agency?
Yeah, I thought the Jets had a really good free agency. They addressed the offensive line. I mean, Joe Douglas wasn't kidding when he said he was going to protect Sam Darnold. The Jets are going to have likely 5 new starters on the offensive line this year, and that's what they needed to do. I mean, they were 7-9 last year after a 1-7 start, 7-5 when Sam Darnold played quarterback post mono. And you look at their team, they're not that far away. If they get better protection, that will open up the run game for Le'Veon Bell. That will give Sam more time to take the next step in year 3. I like what they've done. Drafting Mekhi Becton was huge. The big question mark for the Jets is going to be health, but that's for every team. But last year they were just decimated with injuries. And the question for them is also going to be the wide receiver position. How quickly can Denzel Mims come along and be an impact player after they took him in the 2nd round out of Baylor? If he's really good, to go with Rashad Perriman, to go with Chris Herndon coming back from injury, and Ryan Griffin and Jamison Crowder in the slot, and using Le'Veon Bell as a wide receiver in some packages, I think the Jets could be a really good team. I don't think it's that crazy to think that if Sam is as good as I think he's going to be, now that they have some time, he'll have some time in the pocket to make some plays. I think the Jets could really take a big step forward, and I'm looking forward to watching it. And from a Giants standpoint, everything they've done is to try and surround Daniel Jones with the pieces he needs to be successful going into his 2nd year. So I like the draft they had. I think drafting Andrew Thomas at number 3, getting a stud left tackle to protect his blind side, and then also help Saquon Barkley have some holes to run through, I think that's huge. So I like what the Giants have done, addressing some of their needs. And who knows? I think there's a chance they maybe make a run at Jadeveon Clowney, same with the Jets. So maybe they're not done, both those New York teams.
Yeah, this is a two-parter question here. Let me ask you this. Are you surprised that the Packers traded up for Jordan Love? And the next question is, are you surprised that the Patriots didn't draft the quarterback?
I am not surprised the Pats didn't draft a quarterback because I think every move they've made this offseason was a dead giveaway they believe in Stidham.
Mhm.
If they're not going to bring in Andy Dalton, if they're not going to bring in James Winston, who both got one-year deals paying next to nothing, Cam Newton's still out there. They're not going to bring him in, and it doesn't look like. When you see all these quarterbacks sign elsewhere, to me, the writing was on the wall that New England believes in Stidham. To me, it wouldn't have made sense if they drafted a quarterback because you don't even know what you have in Stidham yet, unless you're just so convinced he's not your guy. But when they re-signed Brian Hoyer, I said this on my show at the time when I was still working. When they brought in Brian Hoyer, a guy that knows the offense, that can push Stidham, but he's not probably going to be able to win that job, it gave the indication they like Jarrett Stidham. They want to see what they have, and they think he could be the guy. And if it doesn't work out, they'll draft the quarterback next year. But all the moves they've made and everything that has kind of been leaked out there indicates that they like Stidham. They want to see what they have and give him a chance to be the guy for the 2020 season.
Oh, and then my other question was, are you surprised that the Packers traded up for Jordan Love at 30?
Yeah, Jordan Love was, I think, a huge surprise. I mean, that's a surprise because Green Bay was 13-3 last year, Nathan, and they were a game away from the Super Bowl. So, you look at Aaron Rodgers, yes, he's up there in age, but when you consider they haven't drafted a skill position player for the guy since he's been the starting quarterback of the team, I think that tells you all you need to know about, the mistrust between quarterback and the front office. I felt they should have been all in to try and load up on talent to get help next to Devontae Adams on the outside for Rodgers. That team, as good as they were last year, they were led by their defense, not their offense. So I thought they needed to use the draft to improve there. And you know what? If you want to take Jordan Love in the first round, okay, fine. But in the second round, in a loaded wide receiver class, they go and take a running back, right? And running back was a strength for them last year. Look who they have on the roster already. So, to not get a single wide receiver in this draft, a draft that featured more wide receivers being picked than I think ever before in the common draft era, to not draft a stud wide receiver for your franchise guy who was under contract making great money for the next couple of years, that to me was one of the biggest surprises, if not the biggest surprise of the entire draft.
Yeah, it seems going back to the Brian Hoyer situation, it seems like he's been on the Patriots 100 times already with the releasing and signing. I don't know, back and forth with Brian Hoyer going to the Patriots, but switching gears here real quick to the NBA basketball. So if they do have this, obviously there's no games right now. Are you concerned with the longer this goes with the pandemic? Do you think they'll end up canceling the whole season and restart for the next year, or do you think they'll go right to the playoffs?
I think when they do return, they're going to have to go right to the playoffs. I understand that a lot of these owners want to have some semblance of a regular season to get to about 70 games because then they could, get all the money from the regional TV contracts they have with all these clubs. But I think the reality is there's just no motivation for a team like the Knicks or the Golden State Warriors to come back. So I think there's going to be a big disconnect between teams that legitimately have a chance to win a title, like the Lakers, Clippers, and Bucks, and other teams like the Knicks, the Warriors, and all these teams that aren't in the playoff mix that, had no incentive to come back and play. So I do think ultimately when the NBA returns, if it does return, it's going to go right into the playoffs. But I think even the return of the NBA is in question right now. There seems to be a lot that still has to get worked out. And if it does come back, if they do return, are they going to do this bubble scenario where they play games at Disney World in Orlando or on the Strip in Vegas at some of the MGM properties there? Those to me seem like the two most logical choices. But are we at a point yet in this country where the testing you need to do that is so readily available? I'm not sure. It doesn't seem like it is at this point. Maybe in a couple of weeks that will change. But it is May 11th, so you kind of do have to have a plan in place before things get, too late into the summer, and then you just scrap the season as a whole.
Yeah, so speaking of your local team, the Houston Rockets, what did you think of them before the pandemic started? And I feel like Mike D'Antoni is all about scoring, obviously, but what do you think of that team overall?
I think they're still a work in progress. And what the thing with the Rockets is they went with the small ball mentality. They traded away Capella at the deadline. And they were, having some moments where they played really well with the small ball. And then there were some moments where they really got out-rebounded. And, the brutality of being undermanned night in, night out, maybe will catch up to them in the playoffs. Or maybe it works. We don't know. And that's kind of what's unfortunate from a Rockets perspective if the season is canceled. And even if it does come back and it's just right to the playoffs, did we really learn on whether or not the small ball move that the Rockets made at the deadline paid off. Did we really learn definitively if it's either a good move or a bad move? There's probably going to be a lot of gray area where you could argue for either side. We really don't have a straight answer on that. So I think when they're right, they could play as well as any team in the NBA. When Russ is on his game and Harden is on his game, you're talking about 2 of the top 8 players in the league, I'd argue. Problem is, both guys could be inconsistent at times, and small ball can be inconsistent. So I don't know what the Rockets are. I don't think anyone does. So I think if you're a Rocket fan, you want the season to come back because, hey, you have a chance. But you also don't know, long term if the moves they made at the deadline were the right moves. It's a giant question mark here in Houston.
So now let's talk about Brooklyn Nets, because I feel like they're in a pretty interesting situation with this pandemic, because obviously they don't want to say if KD and Kyrie is going to come back, but this is interesting. Obviously, we're going through a tough time, but this can help the Nets, because I feel like the way Kevin, obviously it's tough for these players to work out and train, but I can definitely see Kevin Durant, if he's okay, if he's healthy, 100% healthy, he can come back for the playoffs this year. What do you think?
All the indications are that even if he can come back, he's not going to. I saw Woj put out a report saying that even if the season does resume and it goes deep into the summer, Durant's not going to come back at all. Listen, the Nets this year, even with some of the mess with Kyrie and getting hurt and some of the controversy there and whatnot, it was never about this year. It was all about next year with Durant and Irving playing together and trying to win a title. Whoever they make the next head coach of the team, they're going to have the blessing of KD and Kyrie. That's just how it goes. So, as much as people wanted to tout the culture of the Brooklyn Nets and the job that Atkinson did and Sean Marks, the reality is, as good as a job as they did, to get to the next step, they needed the 2 superstars, and now they have them. So, how are they going to get to the next level? Well, we're going to find out next year. We're not going to find out this year because I really don't think Durant's coming back.
So, speaking of the next head coach, are you surprised that they got rid of Kenny Atkinson? And I interviewed actually Kristen Rimfield. He's a Brooklyn Nets reporter, and I interviewed him recently. And I told him, I brought up a outside of the box candidate for the next head coach for the Nets, and I said Greg Popovich as a candidate because he can hold these players accountable, especially the superstars. But first, let me get your reaction on Kenny Atkinson, and what do you think of the Popovich thing?
Yeah, Atkinson surprised me just because everything we heard was how great of a job he was doing. Players love him. And then, he didn't get along with Kyrie Irving. Well, all of a sudden, maybe Kevin Durant didn't like Kenny Atkinson. And then that's all it takes for the superstars to come in and ruin whatever great culture everyone wanted to talk about with the Nets, which is the biggest bunch of BS. And when I hear the word culture in sports, it's such nonsense. But don't even get me started on that. But yeah, I was surprised Kenny lost the job. I think he's a really good players coach. I think he does a good job developing young players. I'm a Knicks fan, Nathan, so I'd love to see the Knicks hire Kenny. He was an assistant there. We all know he's from Long Island, so I think it'd be a great story if he got the Knicks job and could develop, a Mitchell Robinson and R.J. Barrett and help Kevin Knox and Frank Ntilikina, because that's what he did with the Nets. He took a team that had a bunch of young pieces and they all got better under his watch. So I think Kenny deserves a lot of praise for that. I'd love to see the Knicks hire him if they can't get like Jeff Van Gundy or someone like that, or Tom Thibodeau. It seems like he's maybe the leader in the clubhouse. But I think Kenny's a good coach, and I thought he got a raw deal. And as far as Popovich goes, I just don't see him leaving San Antonio. I think if he were to leave, maybe Brooklyn would make a lot of sense, right? It's a ready-made team. Sean Marks is the GM. He comes from the Spurs organization. I'll tell you what, I don't think it's crazy, but I don't think he's leaving. If Popovich were to leave, though, Brooklyn, I guess, could make some sense, but I don't see that happening.
No, because the reason why I bring up that thing, because I feel like Becky Hammon deserves her shot to be the first women's head coach in the NBA, because she's doing a great job as assistant coach, and I would like to see that sometime in the future with her being a head coach in the NBA.
Yeah, no question. It seems like she will eventually get an opportunity. It's just the question is she going to get that opportunity with San Antonio, or is it going to be with another team? That's the question nobody has the answer to.
So before I get to the rapid fire questions, I want to ask you one baseball point here for the Yankees. Obviously, they had a big offseason by getting Gerrit Cole, and now with all this, and then now they're coming up with situations where, like Jeff Passan reported that they're coming up with the deal where they can start baseball in July sometime and do a little spring training. And I heard another report that the National League is trying to do a DH. Is that true?
Yeah, it seems like the National League for the years is going to do the automatic DH to try and prevent pitcher injuries with everything going on with the pandemic. Not a permanent thing, just for the year.
Okay, so let me get your thing. Do you think how many games do you see if the baseball comes back with I say 80 between 80 to 100 games, and then what are your thoughts on Gerrit Cole and his expectations for the Yankees?
Yeah, I think if baseball does come back, all the plans you see that have been reported that are out there, it should be about an 80-game season, probably extended playoffs as well. So the clubs can make up more revenue in TV revenue, TV contracts with extra playoff games. So I see that as a strong possibility. As far as Gerrit Cole goes, I mean, listen, the guy to me is the best pitcher in baseball. I've had the opportunity to watch him over the last I've had the opportunity to watch Gerrit Cole over the last 2 years since I moved to Houston and saw a lot of his starts, saw how nasty he was in person, and just I think he's phenomenal. I think he's got the right mentality to handle New York, so I don't think the pressure of pitching for the Yankees is going to get to him. He grew up a Yankee fan. He knows the deal. So I'm excited about him. I think expectations should be through the roof. Picture CeCe Sabathia 2009 all over again. That ace that the Yankees needed, that guy that will take the ball every 5 days, stop a losing streak, start a winning streak, pitch well in big spots. I mean, look at Gerrit Cole's postseason numbers last year with the Astros. They don't get to the World Series without him. He was sensational, and Yankee fans saw him shut them down over 7 innings in Game 3 of the LCS at Yankee Stadium. So, yeah, Gerrit Cole is just, to me, the best pitcher in the game, and he's in his prime, and I would expect him to come to the Yankees and continue to be a great player for them and help them win championships.
Yeah, I'm a big Yankee fan too, and I was so excited when it happened. I was in Florida at that time when it happened, and it was just I woke up at 12 midnight because to see my phone. I looked up the phone and said, "Oh wow, Gerrit Cole 9-year, $324 deal. Man, that's just amazing." Brian Cashman, man, everybody criticizes him, but he does a great job for us. He's one of the best GMs in baseball, in my opinion. So, but going to the rapid fire questions now. You ready?
I'm excited, Nathan.
Okay. Kawhi Leonard's laugh or Kevin Hart's laugh?
Ooh, Kawhi Leonard's laugh is more iconic. The more memes made about it. So I'll go with Kawhi.
Thoughts on this Michael Jordan documentary?
Hey, it's must-watch TV every Sunday night. I tweeted this, I think, after the first 2 episodes aired in April. If I could watch all 10 of them right now, I'd sit down on my couch and just do it. It's been so good. It's been, phenomenal every Sunday night to know that there's something big on that everyone is going to be watching at the same time. It feels like a sporting event, even though we're talking about things that happened, in some cases 30 years ago, 23 years ago, if you go back to that 98 season. It's been great. It's been awesome. I think an entire generation of sports fans that maybe weren't around when MJ was in his prime or were too young to really remember what it was like when, he was dominating the sports landscape. Getting a chance to see it in this documentary has been phenomenal.
Yeah, I told my other friends that I'm going to write a big piece about it after this is over. After 9 and 10 and over, 9 and 10, I'm going to write a big blog about it or a piece and share it to everyone about my perspective on it. So I'm looking forward to that. And then favorite food.
Ooh, this is tough. So I'm a native New Yorker, as you know, Nathan. So I'll go New York sliced pizza. I barely have pizza down here in Houston. I love Houston. We have amazing food in the city besides pizza. It just doesn't do it for me here. But, I'm either going to go with the New York bagel or the New York slice of pizza. I'll go with the pizza to answer your question.
Favorite hip-hop artist currently and old school?
Ooh. Favorite currently, I probably would go Post Malone if you consider him a hip hop artist. I know he does some singing as well. Either him or Drake are 2 of my favorites. I've seen both in concert, and I've been a fan of both for a long time already. Favorite old school, I mean, Jay-Z's been around so long. Can I consider him old school?
Yeah, I mean, that Jay-Z's actually Jay-Z's basically the icon of hip hop. So I would say old school and currently.
Yeah, I'd go with Jay-Z then for old school. I mean, he's still current. He's still putting out music, but Jay-Z is someone that I've always been a huge fan of, so I'll go with him.
Yeah, speaking of Post Malone, my friend and I, we met his accountant manager in LBI one time. His manager was there, Post Malone's manager at the beach, and met his whole family there. But favorite thing to do outside of your work?
Ooh. Well, do you consider my work watching games? Because since we have no games, I'm really missing that. But no, I mean, favorite thing to do outside of work. I love playing basketball, man. I play a lot of pickup basketball in my free time, and obviously, all the gyms are closed and all the rims at the local parks have been ripped off, so people can't gather around. But I miss playing pickup basketball. So I'll go with that as my favorite thing to do besides my job, which it's talk about sports for a living. It's a great job.
Best young point guard in the NBA right now, Trae Young or John Morant?
Ooh, this is tough. I think I'm going to go John Moran. As much as I like Trae Young, he's putting up all these numbers, but the team's not really winning any games. I think Memphis has had a way better year, and I think Ja's style so far has equated to more winning. So it's close. Both are phenomenal young players. I'll go with Ja.
Where do you see Cam Newton going?
Great question. I think Cam, when he does sign, it's going to be after an injury to some player. Unless he's serious about being a backup, then I think there'll be some offers that will come in from. But I think maybe his best bet at this point, with everything going on with the pandemic, is to kind of just wait until maybe an injury pops up with a starter, and then he gets the opportunity to go. I really thought he was going to go to the Chargers. I thought that would make some sense. But the second they drafted Herbert, you knew that wasn't going to happen. So I'm all for Cam kind of waiting it out and getting an opportunity to go sign somewhere. I will say, I think Cam gets a bad rap. I had him on the show in Miami, and he couldn't have been a nicer guy. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I'm a fan for life after the interview we did with him. So I think Cam Newton deserves an opportunity to continue playing somewhere, and I think he will get that chance. It just might take a couple more months.
Favorite sports movie?
Ooh, it's a tough question, Nathan. I'll go with the movie Miracle.
And then the last two things here, I've been asking this question to all my guests that come on the show to get the perspective on the late Kobe Bryant, what he meant to them, and for you as a analyst and now the reporter, and what did he mean to you? What does Mama mentality mean to you? What did his daughter Gianna mean to you?
Yeah, it's really sad. It's still kind of surreal that he's no longer with us. I'll never forget when I found out that he had passed. I was on a flight to Miami for that Super Bowl. It was on a Sunday, and we landed. I didn't have internet connection on the flight. But when I landed, it was like 10 minutes after TMZ first broke the story on social media, and I just couldn't believe it. I was like praying that it was a joke, that it was a false report, that it wasn't true. Then I'll never forget. I have Adrian Wojnarowski subscribed on my phone, so I get like his notifications pushed. And it popped up that he was reporting that it was true. And I was just like, oh, God, I can't believe it still. It just doesn't feel real. And, 2020 has just been a horrible year so far with, some of the notable deaths and obviously what's going on right now around the world with this pandemic. But, yeah, Kobe, he was probably my favorite non-Knick player. I just loved watching him. I loved his mentality. How do you not respect a guy that just cared so much about winning? It was very Michael Jordan-like, as Kobe talked about in The Last Dance a few episodes ago. So it's just surreal that he's no longer with us. Obviously it's a horrible tragedy, and it's something that we're all never going to forget for as long as we live, about what it was like when we found out that Kobe passed.
So the last thing here, would you like to say anything to all the Frontline people?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being from New York, I see it firsthand, just, the sacrifices that the frontline healthcare workers are making. And, not even just in New York, of course, but just, everywhere in our country and around the world. Those men and women are the real heroes. And, when things do get back to normal at some point, I hope that, since this is a sports show, I hope a lot of these sports teams, invite all these first responders and healthcare professionals to games and honor them. And, they get the proper praise that they deserve, because they're the true heroes in all this. And, they're risking their lives for others. And, that's what a hero is.
Yeah. So before I let you go, my cousin and I and my younger brother, we have a GoFundMe page going in my Instagram. The link is in my Instagram for the Frontline people and all for the local food businesses. We've raised over like 2K, and we've been handing out sandwiches and supplies to all the nurses, doctors, and the cops. And as we speak, my brother's doing the same thing today right now. I couldn't go because of the interviews, but so we've been handing out sandwiches for the past 2 weeks to all these people. And so we're trying to help in any way to end this sooner than later. But if you don't mind, check out the link on my Instagram, the GoFundMe page, and please, if you can, donate. Yeah, so.
Absolutely, that's a great cause, and you and your family should be very proud of your contributions. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And tune into Instagram on live today at 2:00, as the great Trey Wingo will be joining me today at 2 from ESPN. So that'll be a good one. So I just want to say thank you for coming on the podcast today. And you do a great job, and keep up the great work. And I'm looking forward to seeing more content about for you and the show. And really looking forward to you doing the show again coming up next week. So, but you and your family stay safe.
Thanks so much, Nathan. I appreciate it, man. You've been a great caller to my radio programs over the years, so it's great to connect with you. And I'm looking forward to being back on the radio and hearing Nathan in New Jersey call the show once again.
Yeah, yep, for sure. And thank you.
You got it. Thanks so much, Nathan.
All right.